Hello everyone. I'm Crystal again. I'm from Pierce College in Los Angeles. I'm a tutoring center director, and I'm also a coordinator for 3CSN. That's the California Community Colleges Success Network, which is a statewide professional learning network that hosts this amazing event that we have every Friday at 3 o'clock until 4:30. And 3CSN, our job is just to bring people together and network and talk about how we can improve our own practice and share our successes and our stories with each other so we can create more powerful and learning centered and equitable spaces on our campuses from whatever role we play. So Fridays at 3 o'clock, we have Peer Education Power. So that is where peer education professionals from all over the West Coast and beyond get together. We talk about the issues and successes and conversations that peer educators need to be having. And by peer education professionals, I'm talking about tutors, SI leaders, coaches. I'm talking about peer mentors and the faculty, classified staff, and administrators and students who live and work in that space. So all are welcome. And each week we have the pleasure of inviting a different peer education professional to come on board and lead a discussion about that which is important to them and some of their successful practices. And today we are super happy to have Nico Crumpton from Grossmont College back. He's presented with us before, always does a bang up job. And we're so happy to have you here to talk about strengthening the peer tutoring cycle. So Nico, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nico Crumpton, Supervisor of Tutoring at Grossmont College. I'm glad to have you all here today. We're going to be talking about the tutoring cycle, which you may or may not have at your program, but it's really easy to pick up. We'll be spending a little bit of time going through a bit of a PowerPoint just to refresh everyone, and then we'll have some discussion in the later half of the workshop so you can talk it out with your peers and share your tips and tricks. I'm going to go for a screen share here without any mistakes, flawlessly switch over, and welcome you all to the tutoring cycle strength training today. We got a few housekeeping slides here. So we're going to review the tutoring cycle process, talk about our strengths and challenges, and share useful advice for each step of the cycle. The workshop goes until 4. There's an after party from 4 to 4:30, or a superset if I can remember enough gym puns. And there will be links and material in the chat. Keep an eye on that just as things come up. Feel free to use the reactions if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, or you can put a question in the chat, and we have some wonderful a triad of assistants to help out today. We also have a few community agreements. These are just some little ideas or things to keep in mind to be kind to each other. We're going to have some discussion time. We're going to hopefully learn some new ideas, think about some new practices. If something seems strange or bizarre, it's maybe my fault, but it's maybe an opportunity. And if you don't want to be in a breakout room, we'll have an opportunity to talk about that later. You can also work on your own if you need. So this is the basic agenda. We're going to introduce the cycle, do a little self-assessment moment, have a discussion, and then we're going to make a commitment. And to start off with some background, this is the exciting stuff. The tutoring cycle is originally from The Master Tutor, a guidebook for effective tutoring. Wonderful edition by the ever eternal McDonald. The original was 12 steps long, and we're going to do a 5-step version today. And I've seen some programs use a 3-step version. I vastly prefer the 3 and 5-step. When I first applied to be a tutor at an old program, they quizzed me if I could remember all 12 steps of the cycle. I didn't think this was super effective because I felt like when I was tutoring, I was kind of like, am I on step 3 or 9 or 8? And it got a little out of hand. So I think 5 is a good medium amount. And it can also be applied to other settings. So even though it's called the tutoring cycle, I don't want you to feel like maybe this doesn't apply to whatever program you're in. If you do group workshops or coaching, peer mentoring, this is a really flexible cycle. So you can kind of adjust it to whoever you're working with. So the grand reveal, the first step, this may surprise you, is a welcome. You got to start there, right? Then you set the agenda, provide guidance, review what you talked about, and make a plan. There'll be a quiz at the end. I'm just kidding. The 5 steps to kind of give a brief look of what each one is. So you can see here a little bit of a deeper look at each step. Some highlights maybe about welcoming. Generally, we think of the first time you meet someone as a welcome. You have to do the introduction. But also think about making them comfortable and what that looks like in subsequent sessions. So, maybe the first time is very formal. Hello, nice to meet you. And then like the 10th time is what up, welcome. And you can do your secret handshake or whatever you've developed with the student. Setting the agenda is really critical because it also includes expectations. And we'll have a little bit of chance during the discussion to talk about that. But I think many of us have probably had the experience of running a tutoring session that never seems to end. And it may be because expectations weren't set at the beginning. Guidance, the guiding step is really kind of what we traditionally think of as the tutoring time. So that's where the student's working, asking questions, you're helping them move forward. Generally the meat of your time spent with the student. The review part is really important. This is where if you didn't get any aha light bulbs during the session, you can try to snag one during the review. This is where you make sure they actually learned what you were talking about and didn't just kind of zone out and let their hand write whatever was coming to them. And then at the end of the session, I feel like this is an oft forgotten step, but making a plan going forward. So you did some work, you're feeling good. What does the student do next? Or do they have anything to do next? So this could be come back tomorrow and I'll see you again. This could be meet with your professor for office hours. It could be reward yourself. You've done a great job. Whatever you feel like fits next in their plan so that you can leave them with something to do or know they're going on productively with their day. So we're going to take a little bit of time. You can just, for your own sake, think about these questions in regards to the tutoring cycle. Which step do you think is your best? Are you a welcomer, an agenda setter, a travel guide? Do you really do a good job planning, giving them assignments and next steps? So think about what is your strength, and then which step do you need help with? Some people tend to forget to make an agenda. Some people tend to forget to review. Most people hopefully do the guidance, but maybe anything's possible. And then we'll move to the discussion. What we're thinking on this moment, keep in mind that you probably are already using a lot of elements of the tutoring cycle, even if this is your first time hearing it today. So if you're reflecting on that, think about what you do now in your tutoring practice and how that fits into the cycle. Yeah, let me go back. Oh yeah, here we go. So let's do 3 minutes of self-reflection. Which is your best step? Which one do you want to work on? How are you already doing the tutoring cycle? What have you maybe been missing from the tutoring cycle? So the last few seconds of enjoying that peaceful moment of reflection. So now we can start moving into the discussion portion. So you're going to take those self-reflections into your discussions and try to take your own experiences, your own reflection, and we're going to work together on each of these steps through these separate discussions. So we're going to open the breakout rooms in a moment. There's going to be 5 plus 1. There's going to be 5 for each cycle step. You can choose whichever one you want to join into. And if you really want to, you could come back and jump back into a different one. But think about the step you most want to talk about today. It's easy to think I want to improve everything all at once. But in this moment, try to think about the one most important step for you in your practice this semester. And then you're going to talk about techniques that you use during that step, what that step looks like in your tutoring sessions. And I really encourage people to talk about phrases. Sometimes I call them words of wisdom, but things that you find effective to say to students, like, how did you get there? Or, just saying like, well, what's next after this? Whatever kind of simple verbal phrase that you feel like you use frequently with students that you think gets a good response. We don't have too much time today. We have a good amount of time. So maybe focus on the questions that spark something for you. In particular, I want to draw everyone's attention to, there's a few questions about the difference between in-person tutoring and online tutoring, and short sessions and long sessions. Some people, maybe primarily math tutors, tend to do shorter tutoring sessions, maybe 5 to 15 minutes, whereas writing tutors tend to do 30 minutes to an hour. I encourage you to think about how the cycle can expand or shrink depending on how much time you're using. So welcome back, everybody. I hope you had some good discussions. And again, don't feel like you had to get through all the questions, so no pressure if you really dug into one, whatever called out to you. We're going to spend a few minutes here just kind of reviewing how the discussion went. And then we'll get to the wrap up. Does anyone want to share some words of wisdom or something you'll do differently next week?
Yeah, so I had a really robust conversation with Lori and Samuel in the chat about welcomes and like ice, a little bit at the end about icebreakers. And I think kind of the last question really struck a chord for me. The last question we had kind of discussed was like, what happens if you skip the welcome or the rapport building moment? And Samuel had said it feels very rote. And that connected in my brain to like that transactional relationship, and how it really then doesn't create that equitable learning environment where it's like we're partners in this process. And I don't know, it's just like if we skip the rapport building, it just feels so icky. Like getting right down to business without even acknowledging that we're both humans here just feels really gross. So I think in my head, it really reminded me like, take that time, even if it's, 1 minute, a few minutes to build that rapport with the student. I think the whole session would go even smoother after that.
Nice, good point. Crystal, you want to jump in?
Love that discussion. Thank you, Lindsay. I was also in an amazing breakout room, and I was with Wendy and Pauline and Enha, and we talked about another oft skipped step, which was the review, because we just feel like, we just get so into our groove that we either run out of time, or the student keeps wanting more and more and more, so we don't carve out, or we're unable to carve out that time for review, or it's just not built into that review. And we just talked about sort of like, how challenging it is, and yet also how important it is to stop and create that time for the meaning making and the connections, and how much we enjoyed that this session was set up such that the guidance, like the formal guidance, was really, it was just a couple of minutes, and then a lot of it was us being able to dig in and make our own meaning. So we thought that you modeled this really nicely, and we just spent the rest of the time thinking about, like, how do you do that for paper drop off, right? Like, how do you do that, in an SI session versus a tutoring session? We didn't come up with any good phrases, though. I don't know, maybe my partners have some good phrases or other ideas that they wanted to share, but we didn't get that far.
I feel like a lot of times people skip the review, but without the review, you don't know for sure. Like, you could have tutored someone for like 2 hours, and at the end of it, they may not have actually learned anything if you don't check.
So yeah, that's why I was telling in my group that we sometimes the review is for me as a tutor, because after 30 minutes, if I ask the student a question about what we have discussed before, and if I got this look that what, so I need to okay, what is going on here? So I need to, let's say, try to do something else, use different techniques in a way that I get what I need from the students. Sometimes some of them. Otherwise, it's a kind of a good step to for both to see at which level the students of understanding they are, and for me, whether my techniques are effective enough to get the students to the understanding that I want.
This is a really interesting point, and so maybe something also for everyone, if you want to reflect on down the line, is how the tutoring cycle impacts multiple sessions. So each time a student experiences the tutoring cycle, they get better at it as you do. So if they experience it the first time, and maybe the first time they're not sure what the agenda is supposed to be, they're like, my paper's not good, but I don't know what it is. And then you work with them and you talk about what a thesis is and topic senses. And then the next time they come in, they may say, I know I want to work on my thesis today. So each time a student experiences the tutoring cycle, they get better at going through it. You're teaching them student skills as well as subject. One more share from
Nico, can I go what happened in our break rooms? Because it was very good. In our break room was Diego, Ariela, Lorena, and Alice. And, we had some discussion, especially it was about the plan for the next session. And I mentioned that, as I think Crystal mentioned, that it is toward the end of the class. We don't have that much time, but phrases should be there. And, Alice and Ariela, they put together some wording. For example, Alice talked about, she quoted about President Kennedy. For example, do not talk about what your country can do, what we can do for your country. It means that something like together we should do something. And, all these things like this, together, I'm here to help, some kind of helping idea for students. I think that was very good. This was the golden point or golden things that today for me. And that's the whole things that I can, and when we are finishing that, I was telling them that we should give some word that they will come back and they can a little bit reduce that stress on them, because students are under stress. Well, it is normal. They are fearful of their grade, what will happen to them, if everything will be okay. Especially my course, it is the first course of for civil engineering student to enter the department. So for this reason, it was very important how we should approach that issue. But I think that part for plan for the next session is very, very important now. You know, when going through that things for me, that I will never ever leave it like that. You know, I will say, stop this. This is very important. And telling them, no, do not have any problem. I am here to help you. And the other thing was that I think Lorena told me, together we will do this. We will do this. So, you know, and I think that thing that Daniel emphasized, that bring the level at the same level of students. If we can do something like it, this is much better. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So given all of this wonderful conversation information, I want you all to make a commitment. This will be a practice for the rest of the semester. One step of the cycle that you are just gonna be 100% focused on for the next 8 weeks, however many weeks, your own amount of weeks. So think about, maybe it was the step you talked about in your group, or maybe it was the step you didn't get to talk about yet. Whichever one it is, every day when you show up for your shift, I want you to think, I'm going to rock the agenda today, or I am not leaving any student leave here without a plan. And now I reveal you just got tutor cycled. I think this process is really broad and applicable for whatever work you're doing. It helps you feel more organized. It helps people get more out of what you're working on. I want to thank all of you for taking the time today for attending the Tutor Cycle Strength Training. We're going to give you a little bit more information here, and then we're going to transition into the after party time for anyone that wants to stay. But let me put this slide up here. So I already gave you a commitment, so that was one part of the plan. But the second part is, what are you going to do next week? So if you have time to attend the next workshop, make sure to sign up for that. If you have any questions, you can email me. I'll put my email in here too. You can also email Crystal. I put hers at the bottom, so feel free to bother her. But whichever one of us you want to contact. And I'll say if you're free to go if you want to start your weekend, and otherwise I will stick around and you can throw any questions you want at me.
Next week, we have, if you have to leave, hopefully you can stay, but if you have to leave next week, we have a discussion of toxic positivity in the peer assistance world. So come back for that and let's see how much positivity is too much or what context that looks like. So thank you. Thank you for everyone who's come in. Thank you for everyone who's leaving. Thank you to everyone who's staying.